Good morning. My name is Robert O'Dowd. I come from Ireland, but I work at the La Universidad de León. And I'm talking today about how eTwinning and virtual exchange can be used for the development of basic skills. I'm sorry this has to be a recorded talk. I'm traveling today, and obviously, if you're watching this, it means that something has happened with my trip, and I haven't been able to get to my location on time, and that's why I couldn't connect with you. Apologies for that. So, to talk a little bit about what we're going to do today in my session, I want to talk a little bit about what is virtual exchange and what is blended mobility. Talk about these terms. I'm sure you've heard them before, but what do they mean and how are they being employed in initial teacher education? Because that's what we're all interested in, how eTwinning and similar initiatives can be used in initial teacher education initiatives. Then what do students and us, what do we teacher trainers get out of these type of initiatives? What do we learn from virtual exchange? How do we develop? And very importantly, how is that connected to the development of basic skills, which is going to be such an emphasis now for the Erasmus Plus and the European Commission in the coming years. And finally, I'll talk a little bit about what could the next steps be for eTwinning for student teachers. There, I'm going to ask more questions than offer answers, but I think it's important to consider this a little bit. So, first of all, what is the difference between virtual exchange and virtual mobility? I'd like you guys to think about this for a minute. What is that difference? And what do you understand by the term blended mobility? And what are BIPs? If you're watching this in the hall today, maybe the colleagues that are running the video could pause it for a second now, just for maybe 1 minute or 2 minutes, so you guys could quickly, discuss what you understand by these different terms. What's the differences? What are the differences between them? Well, first of all, let's start with virtual mobility because it's probably the one that has least to do with what we're talking about here today. Okay. Virtual mobility involves students from one educational institution to follow courses organized at a different institution in a different country without having to leave home. So virtual mobility refers to things such as MOOCs, for example, but also it refers to what happened to us during the COVID crisis. Your students could not go on Erasmus, they could not go abroad. What they could do is they could follow courses online in other international universities. They could do the exams online, and then those results were sent back to the home institution. That is basically what virtual mobility refers to. Okay, eTwinning is not virtual mobility. Okay, and we'll talk about that more in a minute, right? So what is virtual exchange? Virtual exchange is something quite different. Okay. It's basically a way to describe the many different ways that learners are engaged in online intercultural interaction and collaboration together with partners from other countries or geographical locations as an integrated part of their coursework and under the guidance of us, of you, the educators. So basically, it's about bringing groups of learners from different countries together to do projects, to communicate together, to collaborate together, as part of their local classes. Okay, they're not going anywhere. They're not signing up for international universities. They are staying, and as part of your course, they are doing online collaborative work with students from other countries, and they're getting a part of their final grade in your courses for that work. And you are helping them. You are guiding them. You are giving them tasks to do, and you are supporting them. Okay, that's what virtual exchange involves. But of course, there are many, many different ways that this can be organized. Okay. Look at all of these terms. All of these terms are, different forms or different ways of understanding what virtual exchange is. eTwinning for future teachers is definitely an example of this. Okay, this is one way. But the other teachers that maybe don't use the eTwinning platform can do similar projects to yours, maybe calling it telecollaboration. In the United States at the moment, COIL is a very well-known term, Collaborative Online International Learning. But there are many, depending on the country you are working in, depending on the area you are working in. So if you are foreign language teachers, you've probably heard of eTandem or telecollaboration or online intercultural exchange. All of these terms are different ways of, basically bringing students together online for collaboration and for communication and the different ways that can be done. Okay, so hopefully that's clear enough. Now, how is virtual exchange being put into practice in our area, which is initial teacher education, right? Well, first of all, we've got class-to-class exchange, which means connecting student teachers from different countries for shared learning experiences. And that is basically what I think eTwinning is all about. Connecting classes of student teachers to collaborate together, to exchange experiences, to make projects together, to make lesson plans together, etc., etc. That's what eTwinning for student teachers is all about, class-to-class exchange. However, we also have blended mobility, which is about combining short, as we'll see now in a minute, but it's more detail in a minute. But it's about combining online collaboration with short-term physical mobility. Okay, so maybe 6 weeks of online collaboration, like an eTwinning project, followed by 1 week in one of the institutions that's taking part, where all of the students can travel and work together and finish their projects together and things like that. Okay, that's blended mobility. There's another area that isn't really explored. I've just finished a very interesting project where what we did was we tried to bring classes of student teachers. Okay, so you can imagine a class of student teachers here in Leon in Spain with another class of student teachers in Germany into contact with real teachers. In other words, with in-service teachers that are working all around Europe. And we got them to the student teachers to prepare maybe activities for them. We got them to interview the teachers. The teachers would tell them about their experiences. The students were telling them what they were learning in their classes. And that works really well as well. That's another way of, looking at virtual exchange. The most difficult way, and the one from what I can see is, it's really not very practical in ways. Maybe you guys will know examples, but I don't, is where student teachers can collaborate with actual schools and children through virtual exchange. And that would give, maybe student teachers could teach online something to the classes of primary school or secondary school teachers. But from what I tell, for legal reasons and administrative reasons, this is very difficult to achieve. But still, I think it's one option, that could work, if we're looking at these different ways that virtual exchange can work in initial teacher education. So now, so what do students learn from these type of projects, right? This is one example. The Evaluate project was a project we brought in the hundreds and hundreds of student teachers from all over Europe. We trained teacher trainers to use virtual exchange, and then we got them to do projects, and we looked at what the students were learning and what the teachers were learning from these projects. Here's just a few examples. And these are probably familiar to you because you guys will have seen what your students are learning from eTwinning already. First of all, become more confident in online foreign language communication. They get better communicating. It's first-hand experience of communicating in an authentic way with people that don't speak your mother language. I'm going to talk about them briefly, and then I'll give you guys a second to read the quotes themselves if you like. Intercultural awareness. It makes students aware of different backgrounds, how students, how their partners work in different ways, how they express themselves in different ways as well. And I see my first typo already, European, not with an N, citizenship. The most important thing I learned is that student motivation in foreign language learning is a shared European challenge shaped by different educational systems. So by getting students from different European countries to collaborate together about teaching, about the problems that they meet in their classrooms, the challenges that our schools have, they get to see that there are many things in common as well. Okay, there might be different contexts, different educational laws, etc., but there are common challenges. Okay, so this, I think, it contributes to European citizenship. And of course, digital skills. It makes students aware that just because you're able to receive a Zoom meeting, you take part as a listener in a Zoom meeting, doesn't mean that you're able to set up and run one. and to be the chairperson in one and to organize these type of things and to record a meeting, etc., etc. Okay, so digital skills are indirectly improved as well. Okay, so if you look at what the basic skills are, okay, and what the commission are encouraging us to focus on, I think definitely literacy, okay, because it's about learning to express yourself orally and writing, whether it's in your mother tongue or in a foreign language such as English. Definitely digital, okay, digital skills, okay, being confident about how to collaborate and to communicate successfully and work online successfully, okay. And then also definitely, I think citizenship, the idea of making students aware of, that student teachers and teachers in Europe have so much in common. There are many different, interesting cultural differences, but the principles, the challenges that underline all of our work, are shared in many ways. And I think the best way to do that is to put your students into contact with students in other countries and make them realize that. It's the only way. Telling them it, getting them to read about it is not the same as getting them to meet students, partners in other countries where they're going to learn about these things. Challenges and limitations, because there are, and any of you that have done eTwinning or any other type of virtual exchange will know about these as well. Okay. First of all, it's about being thrown in at the deep end for many of our students. Especially when I was doing magisterio, when I was doing primary school teacher training, many of the students were challenged by this idea of having to have video conferencing sessions with people from other countries. Take a second to read this comment by one of the students. Okay, so I mean, not all of our students are ready for this type of work, and we need to consider ways to support them by giving them time in class beforehand to prepare their meetings, to show them, to give them the task, explain to them very clearly what they're going to be asked to do. And also maybe if students are really challenged by, speaking face to face with people from other cultures, allow them to do, asynchronous text-based communication by email, in forums that I imagine are available in eTwinning. Let them use text-based tools. That gives them a chance to think, to prepare themselves. There is also a danger that if we are not careful, just by bringing our students together, we're going to have a superficial approach to intercultural difference. Look at this one example by another Spanish student of mine. It has been such an exciting experience because we learned English while we have known a different culture. To my mind, we aren't too different. Both of us like sports, music, and spending time with our friends. I'm sorry, but I want my students to realize there is more to intercultural difference than, all of us liking sports, music, and spending time with our friends. Okay, we need to go to a different level than that. And that's why we need to carefully design our tasks that push students to think about things at a different level and give them an opportunity to see how culture comes across in the way people express themselves, the way people work, the way people reach agreement, these type of things that are not, like I said, that can't be written down, can't be taught in a textbook. And I suppose we need to take into account the danger of assuming interculturality through osmosis. Now, I imagine you are familiar with the term osmosis. But there is a certain underlying belief sometimes in international education that simply by bringing students together, we can sit back and they will almost by nature become interculturally wonderful communicators and tolerant people. And we know it doesn't work like that. Okay. We know we need to be more deliberate about working intercultural elements into our projects and into the tasks we ask them to do in eTwinning. Okay. It's not simply about saying, in Spain we do this, in Ireland we do that. Isn't that lovely? No, we need to go further than that, right? Blended mobility. Blended mobility, I remember, and the other term I asked you about was BIPs, okay? Blended mobility, as I explained earlier, combines online collaborative learning, so maybe an eTwinning type project, with short-term physical mobility, okay? And BIPs are blended intensive programs. and they were launched in the outgoing Erasmus Plus program. And that's all about getting students from at least 3 different countries to collaborate online about a certain topic, and then they receive funding to travel to one of those 3 institutions for at least a week, and they will get 3 ECTS credits for their project. Okay, so your universities all have BIPs, whether you know it or not, and you can apply for one. You need to find 2 other international partners, so 3 countries at least. Okay, and then the rules are constantly changing about how many students have to be mobile and things like that. It used to be 15, I think now it's 10. But you can, again, you go to your international offices and you find out about these. I have been running one for the past 4 years now, okay? For our Master in Educación Secundaria, so Masters in Secondary Education. We have a course called Innovation in Foreign Language Teaching. And my students and students from Germany and many, many other countries take part. And what we do is in the first phase, we have guest speakers, teacher trainers from America and from Europe, speaking to our students, all of them in a big group in online plenary sessions. And then the students are broken up into international working groups of 4 or 5 students from the different countries. And we ask them to do a project related to innovation, or to propose a task, or to find a common problem in their schools and in their countries about education, and work to find a solution for it. And then finally, they come to Leon for 1 week. With the funding we receive from the BIP, we look after them, we feed them, we give them some cultural events, and they work with their partners to finalize and to present their projects. And this works really, really well. We are really happy with this. This is a really exciting way of extending virtual exchange, I think. Here we are. That's, I think, the end of the first year that we did this. And we had a lot of students from a lot of different countries, all of them future foreign language teachers. And what we try to do now is we try to encourage as best as possible for the teacher trainers in the different countries to come as well and to participate in the week that we have in Leon, and to work with us in those trainings. But of course, there are criticisms of this as well. And there's a very interesting article that you can find on LinkedIn. Are we killing Erasmus to save money? By a Portuguese colleague, Magda Resende Ferro. And she says, I'll just read the quotation to you here. In practice, BIPs cost less and are easier to organize and project an image of political success. But this statistical engineering comes at a real cost. We are trading quality for quantity. Students have less time to adapt, experience another culture, or build lasting networks. The educational and human impact is vastly diminished. Okay, so you can see what she's saying here. Compared to long-term mobility, your 6 months, your 9 months abroad, BIPs are superficial and academic tourism, right? However, I would say to that, first of all, they don't have to be superficial, okay? If you structure your BIPs carefully, if you get your students into groups, guide them, give them specific things to do, they are going to, get to know their international partners very well, even though it's only over a period of maybe 6 weeks online and 1 week on face-to-face. Many students go abroad for their year abroad, their Erasmus year abroad, and don't make, proper contacts or in-depth contacts. And what they don't have are tutors like us helping them, guiding them to relate the international experience to intercultural learning and to teaching and how to teach. Okay. So in many ways, these BIPs, okay, they may be shorter, but they can be much more intensive, right? The blended intensive programs, if they are done properly. The problem is that many people set up BIPs and all they do is a very superficial online phase where maybe there's 1 or 2 meetings, students never get to know each other, a couple of talks, they don't interact or anything. And then the main bit is the week in wherever it is. That isn't the way they should be working, okay? I'm getting close to the end. I want to tell you a little bit more about Valiant, which was this project where, like I said, we got student teachers into contact with teachers, with real teachers, as I call them, in-service teachers, okay, in different schools around Europe. So here's an example of how that worked, right? Spanish and German student teachers, we got them into working groups and we got them to prepare learning materials and activities for teaching English in secondary school. We then got them to meet in-service teachers and to talk about the materials, to revise the materials. And then the in-service teachers went and tried them out in their classes. And then the student teachers met them again and they said, well, this worked, this didn't work, you should choose this and stuff like that. And okay, so that was one way, but we also got them simply to interview the teachers about their lives, their challenges, how to motivate students to use how to motivate students to learn foreign languages and things like that. And this worked really, really well. Teachers told the student teachers told us this. Listening to the in-service teachers' experiences constituted one of the most helpful moments of the project, since it made us aware of real situations and problems that we may have to face as future teachers. And another one told us, now I am completely sure that I want to be a teacher. I feel more confident because I noticed that also normal teachers in different countries deal with the same problems. So you see how all of these type of projects, basically what they're giving students first-hand experience of what's it like in the real world of the classroom, or what's it like in other countries, okay, real intercultural experiences. That's the great value of these things that we need to be promoting. But the in-service teachers also told us that they enjoyed these projects. They talked about learning about the student perspective, and because our students, as they're still quite young, they were able to tell the in-service teachers, well, we found this boring, we really liked when our teachers used to do this, etc., etc. Yeah, they were, they appreciated the networking, the community of practice, the enthusiasm of the student teachers. Okay. And an opportunity also, I think, for many in-service teachers that were located in, all over Europe. We were able to recruit in-service teachers from all over Europe, and many of them were living in villages, in the countryside, and they're very isolated, and they don't have a chance to talk about their work and their problems and their challenges with many people. And this was a really valuable way of doing this. So this again might be something that you in eTwinning might want to, develop a little bit more and explore more. If you're interested in that, what we learned from that and the outcomes of that project, we've brought out a book that is free to download. You don't have to buy it, okay? And there's a QR code there where you can download the book. And if not, you can email me afterwards and I'm happy to share it with you as well. Okay? We called it Virtual Innovation and Support Networks. That was the name of our project. Okay, so what is the impact also on teachers? Okay, on teacher trainers, people like you and people like me. All right, myself and a colleague looked at that, and we found that teacher trainers, not doing eTwinning now necessarily, but virtual exchange in general, they really appreciate the networking opportunities. Okay, because very often what maybe you guys have seen is that you start off doing an eTwinning project together, but after that, you go and visit each other. Maybe your universities can sign a learning agreement, a memorandum of understanding together. Student mobility can be promoted, things like that. It can be a first step, on the way to other collaborations. It is also very good intercultural training for us because every year I sit down and I try to do virtual exchanges with my colleagues in different countries. And every year I have to learn how to communicate with them, how to collaborate with them, how to adapt, how to reach agreement. This is very good training for us and reminds us what we're always talking about in intercultural, learning, that sometimes in my university in Leon, I'm not coming across, people from other cultures, from different ways of seeing things. This forces me to do it. And also, of course, professional development. Okay, this pushes us. Very often, I imagine you guys will find that you're eTwinning. You'll do it once, one year, but next year you're going to want to do it better. You're going to want to change things. You want to look for inspiration from other projects. So it pushes you to, to develop as a professional as well. Right. So all of these are, are benefits for us teacher trainers. So to conclude now, I'd like to leave you with a few questions. First of all, what could be the added value of connecting eTwinning projects with short-term physical mobility? Maybe think about that a little bit. Blended mobility projects, what value do they have for you? Um, who should your partners be in eTwinning projects? Other classes of initial teacher education, but maybe in-service teachers, like I was telling you in the Valiant project, but also possibly classes of pupils in schools, if that is legally and administratively possible. What countries and regions should be included in your eTwinning project? There are a lot of projects taking place now involving Ukraine, for example. But that, of course, and I really support that. I have Ukrainian partners in my projects as well. But it brings with it a whole new set of challenges of students bringing with them, great stress, trauma. How do we deal with those type of things? That's another presentation that I have to talk to you guys about someday. And how should eTwinning projects be recognized for student teachers and teacher trainers? If we are going to have eTwinning in the Spanish educational system here, and a higher education system, a university system in Spain, teacher trainers, you and me, we should be recognized in some way for this work, for this innovative extra work we are doing. How can that be done in the Spanish system? Okay, maybe you guys already know examples. And are you giving your student teachers enough recognition for their eTwinning projects? Or are you expecting them to do this on a voluntary basis? Okay, that's another, I think, important question for us to think about. Okay, and finally, we need a lot more research about eTwinning. There are hundreds, literally hundreds of studies about virtual exchange in general. And there are dozens and dozens of projects about, virtual exchange in initial teacher education. But there are very few about eTwinning. We need research about eTwinning. I hope that some of you are working on that or considering it. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm sorry you've had to watch this instead of, well, it would have been the same thing only live, but anyway, at least then I could try to answer your questions. But this is a collection here in this QR code, a collection of links to links, worksheets, information sheets, websites, books, bibliography that you might find useful. And I'd be happy if you want to write to me to respond to any of your questions and comments. Okay. Thank you very much indeed.